6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Do you have a happy place? Do you know what I mean when I say that? It's the place that you go, or it's the activity that you do that just makes you feel good, where you don't have to worry about anyone but yourself, even if it's just for a moment. Normally this is a place or an activity where the stress and worries of life can't get you. And in that way, it is a beautiful, wonderful place. For some people, their happy place is baking something really good, but really bad for you. Or it's spending the afternoon reading wrapped up in a blanket on the recliner. Or it's binge watching some new series you came across on Netflix. Or, I don't know, it's going to your parents' house or visiting grandkids maybe. Maybe another way of asking this is, what is your coping mechanism? When life becomes less than good, what do you do to deal with that? Now I want you to think about this, and as you do, let me introduce you to my happy place, or one of my coping strategies or mechanisms. So, over lunch, you can often find me here at the gym. Now, I'm not going to promote any company brands, but this is one of my happy places, and this is a coping mechanism. I need to work out. I need to get the stress and energy out. I need to plug my ears with my earbuds and blast my favorite music while running or lifting weights. I use this space as a getaway from life. On some level, we all need a place like this. And in this way, the desire to get away from the stress and unpleasantness of life is something that unites us in a common humanity. In fact, Jesus had a place like this too.
To recap today's gospel story, once upon a time, Jesus took his disciples on a getaway to be removed from life. They went up a mountain to be by themselves, and while there, Jesus was transfigured. Or another way of saying that is that Jesus' disciples had an experience of the power of God at work, an experience of the divine. Also, while there, they experienced in some way, shape, or form Moses and Elijah, 2 central figures in the Jewish faith, one being the giver of the law, and the other one of the great prophets. The disciples are overcome with fear, awe, and joy. So much so that they ask if they can build shelters to stay right where they are for as long as they possibly can. Because that is what we do when we are in our happy place. We will do anything to stay as long as we possibly can.
The reason I asked you to think about your coping mechanism or your happy place is that ever since COVID began and life became really challenging, or at least different, so many people have been struggling with how to deal with everything. Give you some examples. So I'm working with wedding couples who have rescheduled and even reformatted their services, in some case more than once, to try and celebrate this great event in their life. I have worked with families who have lost loved ones due to COVID, who were not even able to say goodbye to their dad or mom or grandma or grandpa in the nursing home because of the restrictions that were in place. I know students who are tired of the changing schedules. I know parents who are just as tired. I know many teachers who are struggling under these difficult circumstances. I know medical staff who have seen more death in the last 11 months than they want to see in a lifetime, the ones that work on COVID units. And then there is everyone who is impacted economically. So if you get a chance to escape, even if it's for a moment, to go to your happy place that's not, well, this, you want to stay there as long as you possibly can. Avoidance is absolutely a coping mechanism, and people are trying really, really hard to do just that. If I don't watch the news, and if I spend just a bit more time sleeping or reading or baking or working out, I could also go to a darker place too. If I drink more or find the right drug, well, then I don't have to feel like everything is out of control. I hear this gospel story today very differently in light of the last 11 months. I get why the disciples want to stay on the mountain. Not only is it a good place to be up there with a powerful Jesus and the presence of God, but anything is better than what's down the mountain, the reality of life, poverty, Roman oppression, death, suffering. Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let us make dwellings, tents, homes. Let's stay here a while, Peter says. Instead of going to work this week, why can't I just lay on the couch and watch movies? That will make me feel better. That will make me feel nostalgic. I have a Google Home. It's a smart speaker with a screen on it. We have it set up that when it's not in use, it's kind of like a digital picture frame. And I've caught myself lately spending more than a few minutes staring at the pictures as they scroll by before I head off to work. They are family pictures, so they're great memories of the past. I need that. It's fun to visit and live in the past just for a bit. But as my routine goes, eventually I get up and go into the garage, get in my car, and head out into the world. You can't stay in the past forever. You can't stay in your happy place forever. You can't avoid life forever. Immediately following this amazing experience and the request to build shelters, Jesus tells his disciples that they can't stay. They have to go down the mountain, back to the reality of life, back into the world of Roman oppression, a world where the majority are poor and suffering. They go back down the mountain, which will set Jesus on the road to Jerusalem and the cross. The gospel story today reminds us how important it is to take time and breathe, to pray, to get away, and to pay attention to God. The gospel story shows us how tempting it is to stay in those places that are immune from the stress and anxiety of life. The gospel story today tells us that Jesus does not stay on the mountain, and neither can you. This is actually a central aspect of the Christian faith. God is not going to be far removed from the realities of our world and our life. Following in the way of Jesus is not an invitation to escape the world as sometimes it is presented, but instead, it's the complete opposite. It's an invitation to live more fully engaged with our world. It's an invitation to live into God's kingdom right where we find ourselves. Over the generations, the Church of Christ has always been called to meet people and to embrace people in the midst of the joys and the messiness of life. So do what you need to do in order to get away when you need to get away. Do what you need to do to cope, to listen, to pray, to be still. Find that time in your life. But know this, when you come back down into your life, to a world that is still being ravaged by COVID, when you come down back into the stress and anxiety, the broken relationships, and all of the joys too that are still present here, Christ is with you. Christ meets us here. We have the opportunity each day to encounter our neighbor, to practice being Christ for one another, to practice the way of God through compassion, mercy, and grace. And what we come to know is that although the mountain is good, Jesus will not be found there, because Jesus will be found right where you are now, just as you are, to give you hope and new life, and calling us then to do the same for others. This is the good news that we hear today. Thanks be to God for that. Amen.